G'day guys, welcome to another Hash It Out. On today's video, we have a special guest. Joining me once again is Armeanio as always. And special guest is Gazza. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, CW. Thanks for having me.
And Joe, welcome once again.
It's good to be here. What's the topic of today? What are we hashing out?
I'll just sort of mention this in the green room. The crypto industry sort of just keeps throwing up topics for us just before we do these recordings. And I think it's once again around privacy. And we've seen the tornado cash scenario here where there's sort of been sanctioned. A number of addresses have been sort of frozen on the USDC side. And it's thrown a spanner in the works in the industry once again. So what's your take on that one?
Oof. Well, my take's a little spicy, to be honest.
Come on, heat it up a little. Let's go.
Sure. Well, generally speaking, I think that since Bitcoin first started, right? Bitcoin launched into like hostility in the unknown. Okay. Yeah. And so the design parameters were put together to be resilient, right? It was built to be survivable under fire. That was the goal of it. Like, how do we create a network that is unstoppable, right? That if you go back to like the early Bitcoin community, they're pretty intense characters in terms of, we want to build something that you can't take down, that you can't stop. And now, after a lot of money flooded into the space, there's a really friendly environment. Things just aren't built with that mentality anymore, right? Yeah. If you were to go back and you were to say, oh, look at USDC, it's, a fiat honor that KYCs you, and you can, I think Bitcoin, like the original community would have been like, what the hell is this? Yeah. Should this even exist? Because you have single points of failure. You have, all kind of risk assumptions that you just can't predict. And, our industry has really gotten away from that, like, original mentality of let's build something that you can't stop. Instead, it's really shifted just towards like retail, like, hey, let's follow the rules as best as we can so we can pull as many users in and make money. And, to some degree, it really throws the basic principles of that this entire industry started from, and like the Cypherpunk mentality just completely out the window.
Yeah, it's sad to see. Well, just on that as well, it was just earlier today that I saw a tweet, and it was a screenshot from someone in 2011, I think it was, and it's basically along the lines of just saying, I don't give a shit about profit. All I want to do is just see banks and the government piss themselves. And I think that just sums up just exactly what you said just perfectly. That whole sort of cypherpunk movement's just been thrown on its head, and people are just here for a quick buck, basically, and that's pretty sad, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, Gazza, what's your take on that, mate?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Armeanio. People want adoption, but that brings in the worst kind of people usually, unfortunately. People who want central help, they don't want something decentralized they can't control or stop. So it's kind of a catch-22 when you want adoption. How do you get the adoption with people who want to control it? So you're kind of caught no matter what way you look at it, really. The people coming in now, I'd say 99.9% is just solely for money. No one really gives a shit about what it is anymore, the whole purpose of it.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing about that is they won't care until they have to. And whether that's on like a security front or a privacy front, ultimately that's when it's going to come back and bite this industry pretty hard, unfortunately.
No, it will. Yeah. I think that at some point we're going to see what systems were designed to be resilient and what weren't. Like that, in my mind, at some point something's going to happen either on the regulatory side or the exchange enforcement side, to where we just see, okay, who's actually built to be resilient, resistant, unstoppable, and who's just been growing in sunny conditions, right?
Yeah. The saying that sort of gets thrown around is when the tide goes out, we'll see who's been swimming naked, and ultimately see why or who has built these platforms to be resilient, and sort of who's been just trying to attract the retail investor from the flashy lights and the buzz marketing and things like that. And ultimately, yeah, we'll see who's standing at the end.
I do think Bitcoin has the best hope out of all of them, though, because it was around for so long. The people that were involved in it from day one weren't in it for the money. They were actually in it for the tech. So they probably have a basis now that it's going to be nearly impossible to stop them compared to, say, something like Solana with huge supercomputer nodes. Like that's easy to attack. Bitcoin has so many nodes that are probably, you know, really high level privacy. That how are they going to stop them all? There's no way to do it.
Yeah. It's design choices is the bottom line. It's like, how do you design a system that's actually decentralized to where you don't have a single point of failure or a concentrated few points of failure that, you know, when they're taken offline, everything's done.
Yeah.
That mentality has really left the space, in my opinion. But overall, it's much more driven by just greed and flashiness and, I don't know, general bullshit that we read day to day. But that basic philosophy is important because, you know, if you do have a high pressure environment, like even today, right? Let's say that we have a user that is in a jurisdiction where the government does not want them to interact with this network, right? Like that's an ergonaut. They're somewhere in the world, and that happens today. That's not theoretical. It's, you know, it's live in the world right now. So how can we build a network? How can we build applications that can service that character to where, you know, in that jurisdiction, you know, basically it's unstoppable. You know, I guess it changes people's mentality when it's somewhere around, you know, on the other side of the planet that they can't pronounce versus at home. Yep. But I don't think that the mentality itself should change. You know, and the reality is, when you get a lot of retail, you know, in these systems, sometimes when it comes to principles, you put $1 on the table and you know, their principles are out the fucking window.
Yeah, we see that across the board in sort of any industry, really, and it's pretty sad. And I think sort of everyone at a higher level should sort of stick to sort of principles and their morals as well. I think that sort of ties into it. But yeah, like you mentioned, everyone put a quick buck in sort of front of anyone, and they'll grab it and run for the hills. Might join you up in your hill. Is just after we released the last sort of HashItOut as well, we saw it was the wallet exploit, I believe it was, that sort of. Did we touch on that, the wallet exploit or the bridge? It was Nomad Bridge, wasn't it?
But it's the same problem. It's the same problem in a way. It's like, okay, you're going to put your money in a closed source wallet, right? What are the trust assumptions that you're inheriting with that choice? You know, because that is not something that you would want to do if you want to have like the best guarantees and you want to be quote unquote unstoppable. It's just not what you'd want to do. Like, that mentality is out the window. They say, oh, it has a nicer UI. The colors are really, really pretty. You know, I like the layout. I like the buttons. I like the user experience. And it's like, that's great, but let's get back to the core assumptions you should be making before you touch anything, right? Because, you know, to some degree, those systems that are designed wrong in this space, I don't think they're going to hold under pressure. Just that simple.
Yeah. There was another crowd went under yesterday, Holdenauts, I think it was. It's like a Celsius, kind of a smaller version of Celsius from Singapore. They went under yesterday. They stopped all deposits and withdrawals as well, out of nowhere, I think. So I think people's money is stuck in there as well now. Just another one bites the dust, I suppose.
All right. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to look into it.
350 million, I think, TVL.
Same thing. It's like, let's get retail and then let's rebuild banks and let's get off chain and let's have stupid leverage. And then it blows up and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what happened? Like,
but the unfortunate
how do people still have money in these protocols? Why would you keep it in when you're seeing them dropping off like flies? Why wouldn't you just take it out straight away, all of them? You can see what they're doing. Like, there's none of them that are different. They're all making money somehow by leveraging your money.
Yeah. Exactly. It's pretty unfortunate. So obviously, Tornado Cash has sort of thrown a spanner in the works, or not Tornado Cash themselves, but the recent sanctions. So I believe even GitHub has sanctioned or has removed the code base. I think that's a big development as well.
Yeah. Though, everybody's always known GitHub is owned by Microsoft. Yeah. I think that's like a low-hanging fruit that if someone can figure out, let's get a decentralized GitHub that's unstoppable, everybody would adopt it. That's a pretty easy idea right there that I think a lot of people would get behind.
Yeah, open source, non-custodial GitHub. Perfect.
Yeah.
There's a few kind of around, but I don't know how good they're. Seen a few posted in the last few days. Was it Radical? That's something.
Yeah.
That was
Yep.
when it was posted today. I just saw this morning. Like, yeah, I think we need something like that. They can't just be censoring open source code. It's just so wrong. No matter what it actually does, it's still open source. It's nothing malicious there at the end of the day. People can use anything maliciously, like Fiat can be used maliciously. You can't just stop Fiat because of that.
When you pull open source code off, that's a war on the entire industry, in my opinion. Even if it's not shots fired, I think everybody should be on the same team there.
Yeah. These open source frameworks and everything along those lines, but ultimately, is code considered speech? Is that a sort of stepping the mark there in regards to freedom of speech? Interesting sort of concept to think about.
No, it is. We get into a lot of interesting concepts with privacy in general. Generally, I think that if anybody wants to know where Ergo stands, read the manifesto. Like if you're not on board with that, there's a ton of other networks out there that are probably more in line with your beliefs, right?
Yeah, we kind of, well, it feels like at times that we keep drumming that into people as well, is the manifesto. Read the manifesto, read the manifesto. And ultimately, that's the principle of the direction and the foundation of Ergo itself, in my opinion. It encompasses why it was built, how it's built, and sort of what principles we have to keep at the core moving forward as well. Obviously, asking questions along the way. I think it's one thing that it's a really big sort of thing for the crypto industry as a whole at the moment, because like we mentioned earlier, people are here for a quick buck, and you often see they're the ones who unfortunately get rug pulled and sort of dumped on by VCs and the big actors and all that sort of side of things. And ultimately it hurts the industry as a whole, because you're burning your user base, who then might go and talk to, like, you have that sort of word of mouth aspect as well. Like they might go and tell 10 people and they won't invest in crypto, and it just sort of opens that chain again. And it's sort of one step forward, two steps back sort of scenario.
Yep.
Yeah. Didn't you post something today with like 4 billion% APY, Armeanio?
Yeah, I did. I was people were asking, did you hear what Mark Cuban said? And I was like, look at what this guy's invested in this space. Like, at one point, the Titan thing had like 4 billion% APY. Like, how do you not figure out that is?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, it went to zero almost instantly, and it's like, come on, guys.
Where did they even pull that from? Like, what kind of algorithm are they using to pull that value out of somewhere? How can you possibly produce that much value out of nothing?
That's a serious money printer, that's some crazy inflation right there. I don't even know. How does anybody not think that's going to get debased? But
I don't know.
As long as you're in first and out first, I suppose you could actually make some money. But you have to be. You're not going to beat the bots at the end of the day. There's bots in and out like instantly, which are going to take all the profits straight away, and then you're just caught bag holding. Seems just happens so often. It's ridiculous that people are still getting caught so badly by these things.
Yeah, we still have a long way to go in that respect. Also, is the influence that these guys have in regards to sort of the crypto space, but also the access they have to traditional media sources as well, with doing live interviews and talking along the lines of, say, I'll just throw it out there, like utilizing Doge or, little things like that. Like, yes, there's a dog coin and there's some sort of use case and speculation and there's some fun around it and things like that. But throwing like a billionaire throwing their weight and their opinion behind these sort of things is sort of detrimental to the space also.
Well, but what can you say? They have a brand.
Yeah.
They have a brand. That's generally how I say it and look at like that type of personality. It's, they're just flexing their brand for whatever reason.
Yeah, personal gain often at the forefront of that also.
Pump and dumps. They have the power to do it, so why not, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't give it any attention, to be honest. But people do, and that's sad. But that gets into a whole nother, a whole nother issue. And like, I guess humans in general, they worship people. They don't think for themselves. Not a good idea.
Yeah, and obviously seeing the non-custodial or the custodial aspect in regards to the crypto side of things, where you are in control of your keys, you have to make these assumptions because ultimately you're the one deciding whether to go ahead and interact with a protocol and whether you sort of know the assumptions in what happens to your coins in that respect from the process of signing it to all the way through to, I don't know, getting product X in exchange or just sending it P2P or anything along those lines. People need to understand that there's no central entity here, like a bank, that's going to sort of back you up and refund your coins and things like that. I think obviously people within the space who have been here for some time know those sort of side of things, but ultimately it's trying to get retail to ask these questions, and that's the hard part also. They see that quick buck and they chase it, and often they're sitting there holding the bag at the end of the day.
Isn't that kind of what happened with the Slope wallet app in Solana? There's a trusted permissions kind of section. Is that just allowed to make transactions without signing them?
I think what happened,
where the funds got drained from.
No, I think it was a closed source wallet that leaked everybody's keys.
They're all
it was storing private keys in clear text.
Just not properly built, but it's closed source. So how do you know?
Yeah, when you wake up one day and your balance is zero.
I mean, I don't know. Like if you get back to the like classical mindset of like, how do you be unstoppable? How do you understand risk? And how do we make something that basically is survivable? I actually think the Ergo Mixer is a really good example of that. Right? It's open source code. You run it on your own computer. You don't trust anyone. Everything is on chain. It's non-custodial. It's non-interactive. It's designed with that mindset, right? Yeah. And most dApps, it's like, okay, it's closed source. There's some trusted server somewhere that your computer is going to. You don't know what information they're taking about your IP address or anything else. You don't really know what contracts you're interacting with. And so it's just like, how did that become popular? I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah. Especially when you're interacting with a DEX where you're exchanging one good for another. What's to say things aren't getting front run or slippage is being sort of extended and they're taking a cut of that? And like, you know what I mean? Like there's multiple sort of scenarios in where they can just take some cream off the top and you don't know how it's sort of happening. That's just one scenario, but yeah, the mixer itself, I think that's prime example. And I think you've said it as well. It should be the benchmark of what a DApp is. It's non-custodial. You can compile it yourself, or open source. Yeah, it's the ultimate DApp in my opinion. It's just a matter of sort of pushing that forward and letting people know and understand sort of how they interact with these sort of protocols and tools.
Yeah, because once it's local, then it's like, okay, if CW trusts me, or if we have some, let's say entity that, does some kind of audit, that code's in the wild. You can always share that P2P. You can always get ways to distribute it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the node problem that everybody had with Bitcoin in the beginning. When Bitcoin first came out, regulators that were looking at it were like, how do we kill this? How do we stop it? And they're like, well, you can't, because the nodes are everywhere and we have to take all the nodes offline. Otherwise they'd just come back, right? dApps need to be built with the same mentality, in my opinion. I think I think a lot of things in this space really should have that framework in mind just when they're being assembled. Now, I know that there's going to be people that say, no, we need to, basically sell that out for some adoption, but then you no longer have a resilient network. You no longer have a resilient system. You have something that, basically, can be censored, taken offline, becomes more fragile. And that's not the intent that led to this industry as a whole.
Yeah, well, I think
interesting.
Sorry, go ahead, Gaza.
Yeah, I saw an interesting attack there. Like yesterday, they're saying with Bitcoin, there's certain blocks in the past that have, say, transactions have descriptions. If you put them all together, you can get links to like P2P addresses that share data breaches and stuff. So they're trying to say, like, because you can access them, they're basically, if you run a node, you have access to that, then you're doing something illegal just by running a node because it exists on the blockchain and you can't get rid of it. Which I was trying to say that, but it doesn't make any sense. You can say that about the internet. There's links to everything bad on the internet, but you can't stop that. You can't control it at the end of the day. You'd have to shut down every cloud server place in the world because there's obviously something malicious on one of them. Every one of them, I would say. There's links to something that shouldn't be there. You can't use that as an excuse to shut down Bitcoin nodes.
Yeah, the node side of things, I remember that conversation actually, and I've had it with some personal friends. And it's the resilience of the network. And you're trying to explain to them that it's near impossible to shut all this sort of stuff down. There's got to be like a solar flare and just wipe out all electronics basically on the planet to be able to sort of shut all this down. Like you've got even Starlink now, which is basically a second internet sort of platform outside of AWS and the different rails that are sort of running all this infrastructure. How do you shut it down? Like that's the funny thing. And like a lot of people sort of would have asked that in the earlier days as well, in regards to like what Joe was saying in regards to the government side. And yeah, it would have been having some pretty interesting conversations back then. It would have been pretty funny to listen in on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a industry, we've inherited a lot of, I'm just going to call it fragility. Things are fragile because times were good.
Yeah.
And that's just not the right mindset, in my opinion. I think that in terms of Ergo, it's just a matter of saying, okay, how can we build things the right way? Because we'll have sunny jurisdictions, we'll have jurisdictions that are quite strict, and the reality is we already do have these places on the planet. The difference is they're not the countries that are the primary drivers of liquidity, so people don't care.
Yeah, you see people banning like crypto across different states, and there's conversations in the EU about banning custodial wallets and all kinds of bits and pieces. But like we've asked this a couple of times, how is it possible to shut all this sort of stuff down? How is it possible to stop it? Like there's ways to make it difficult and things like that, but it's a funny sort of thing there. And I think the platform that Gaza, you're involved with, ErgoDex, being open source from day one and allowing anyone to run the batching or the bot services and things like that. I think that sort of plays testament to that proper mindset also in regards to sort of being open and resilient to attacks and shut down vectors, all aids to the solution being resilient.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I love that we have them open. Like it's been a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, because we've had nothing but issues by having it open because people are just taking the code, modifying it, winning most of the transactions. And we're not going to stop them. We're not going to censor it, but it just makes life a lot more difficult for us. So I think Ilya at the moment is creating a kind of lottery system to try and help spread out the winners. So that should help a lot, I think. It's an interesting enough kind of development. I think it's probably nearly ready soon enough. But I think we've one bot now winning about 85% of all transactions. I think they have a fairly powerful machine scanning so quickly, and they're winning the batches instantly the second they're ready. So it's been unfortunate, but it is what it is, I suppose. When you give people free reign, they can kind of mess around and do what they want with it.
Yeah,
That's
some smart cookies out there, and that
Yeah, that's
ultimately
why-
drives innovation.
That's why open source development over time makes stronger systems, right? Because day one, you just put all your attack vectors on tape and say, okay, let's harden this, right? And that's always a process. But the reality is, over time, it gets stronger. You get more resilient, and if you build these things the right way, where they can be distributed, just over time, you get something that's survivable. And everything is closed, and then you don't have to deal with the problems that come with having everyone know your attack vectors. Well, that's until it doesn't, I guess.
Yeah,
you just lose confidence as an investor. What are you investing in? You have no idea. It's a black box.
Yeah, it must be scary at first about sort of like you're saying there, Joe, having all your attack vectors out in the public and things like that. But ultimately, like you said, it just hardens these platforms and makes them more resilient and drives innovation. And someone could come up with something to try and gain an advantage, and ultimately that could be beneficial to the platform moving forward when they sort of implement a fix or even implement the sort of solution that they've come up with to front run everything else. It's an interesting sort of concept to think about.
We had an issue with arbitrage bots. They were an absolute nightmare. So they were trading between, say, the SIG-USD and the ERG pair for all tokens, but it was causing everyone else's transactions to be kicked out of the mempool or just be stuck pending while they were doing their trade, because they were just able to increase the miner fee manually while, say, the rest of us with UI kind of set it up before the trade, and that's set. So they could just set a higher fee and just get the rest of the trades kicked out. So we had to, going far from that, we just found we had to nearly empty the SIG-USD pools to make sure everything started working smoothly again. And it has worked. I think we haven't had any issues since, but it's just another vector of attack because we're open source. They could see exactly how to manipulate the system to kind of do what they wanted and win these trades. Sure, there was one trade where the miner fee went up to 400 ERG. It's just two bots fighting against each other, just constantly increasing it, but it was worth it in the end. They made 10 ERG on that trade.
Yeah, but the lucky miner who hit that block, thanks for coming.
I know.
Well, that is a downside to, let's say, building systems the right way, is it takes time.
Yeah.
Right. It does take time because when it's open source, you're gonna always have to deal with continually improving your code base. But the reality is you hit a point where you're pretty stable, and I at that point, when like the question of, is your build resilient, is it unstoppable, you get a lot of confidence, and that's a beautiful thing.
It instills confidence in the user base, and ultimately that's invaluable, because once you've lost trust, then it's very, very difficult to get that back. I think that sort of ties into any sort of aspect in regards to the industry, wallets, crypto projects in general, closed source, open source, having that sort of open source framework where people can jump in and view the code themselves, get regular updates from the dev side of thing, open communities, engaged communities. That all adds to the resilience of a platform itself as well, because you don't just have a central actor who's sort of swaying the conversation one way or another or anything like that. It's the community who ultimately sort of drives the narrative. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Harden the systems. I think that's the best thing. And then, when it's like, oh, this is happening, what do you think? And, every time you just sit back and be like, well, good luck. Good luck stopping the Virgo mixer. Good luck stopping the blockchain. Have fun. And then just keep focusing on what we're doing.
Yeah.
I saw HNT Helium blockchain got stalled this morning as well. They put some tweet or some Discord announcement that their blockchain got halted at some certain block. I don't know what happened after that. It's kind of scary when that happens.
It definitely is. We've had times, luckily we've never halted, but we've had times where like the consensus slowed down a lot because the network was getting spammed. It's kind of growing pains, I guess, in these type of systems, and so that's one thing that I think users don't even think about. They don't even understand or comprehend is that a lot of these are still in the process of hardening, right? They're in the process of growing, and not in terms of just like their feature set, but their security, how things are optimized to run. That's a continuous process, and so coming in right away with no willingness to look at risk is not always a good idea in this industry.
Yeah, very, very well put. People often think, like, they might look at price of Bitcoin, for instance, and think it's, say, at $60,000 or something, and think they've missed the boat. We're still very, very earlier, in my opinion, in regards to sort of the adoption of this technology, and like you said, the hardening of these systems and the testing of these systems, building out of these systems and ecosystems. There's still a long, long, long way to go in regards to this, and seeing like the actual use and utility sort of being built out. There's numerous sort of use cases that sort of can be utilized here, but it's just a matter of time and figuring out different ways to approach it, and from a legal perspective, and then sort of whether you want to go down that road or you just go down the other route and just go, oh, fuck it, I'm just doing it anyway. I think that sort of pays testament to that whole cypherpunk movement as well, building at least sort of resilient tools for anyone to be able to interact with this technology.
Yeah, we all need to be grateful that the people that initially bootstrapped this entire industry didn't ask for permission.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Because if they did, what would have been the answer?
Well, yeah, exactly.
A centralized system.
Yeah, it was just like, you want to do what? You can do it, but as long as the government has oversight and control of everything. It's like, yeah, no, fuck you.
My bank card still gets cancelled every time I try and buy crypto. I have to use a different finance account, put money into that to buy crypto. It's a joke. The card keeps getting blocked every time I try.
Oh dear. We've still got a long, long way to go in the industry.
Yeah.
No, we really do. But the good news is, if you really look at like the R&D front, there's some fascinating frameworks out there. You get into zero knowledge proofs, and then it's like, okay, well, you think privacy is an issue now, just wait. Because if some of these, get solid assumptions and hold over time, that's a huge game changer. And in terms of user privacy, and then it's like, okay, well, have fun stopping that, right? You can't. I don't think you really get the cat back in the bag, so to speak. I think what you can do is scare like people that don't understand the original principles of this industry and are here for some investment gain. I think you can probably shake them out of the space, but in terms of like a lot of the people I work with every day, they're going to show up. They're going to be and so in that sense, I have a lot of confidence that our industry really isn't going anywhere, and there's going to be a ton of people that just say, let's build. Like it's not a permission-based system anyway. That's the entire point, is it's open and permissionless.
Yeah, from a base layer side of things, there'll be numerous people in that development side who will be reveling in the challenge if it's thrown up where something's regulated. The industry can pivot a lot faster than people can bring regulation in as well, and I think that's sort of forgotten as well. If someone puts the goalposts here, the crypto industry will move them so far away that it takes a year or 2 years, 3 years, any arbitrary amount of time to be able to sort of catch up. And by that stage, they would have had a plan to pivot once again once they get to that point. And that's the beauty of crypto. It's permissionless. They're not asking permission to do this stuff. They're just doing it.
And the truth is, it's even beautiful if you look over the arc of time. That's even happened on the exchange side, right? Exchange, like one thing, Binance does really well is they have a good legal team that, their jurisdiction is hopped around.
Yeah.
And, seen big exchanges come and go and come and go and come and go. As long as there's an incentive there, and there's somewhere on the planet that's a friendly jurisdiction, which there's a lot of reasons to be because there's a lot of money in this space. There will always be some harbor where that type of industry is supported, and I fully expect jurisdictional arbitrage to continue.
Yeah.
So like, okay, you can say within this border set, it's a problem, but I don't know. Has anybody ever heard of a VPN?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say as well. Is you've got that jurisdictional hopping from, say, like using Binance as an example, Binance.com. But then also they have the Binance.us for the North American users, and they can just jump on a VPN and use Binance.com. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's that simple.
I think the problem is that they're kind of more worried about tax. If they use an exchange that's not in the US, how do they explain how do they use using a VPN? Then they're shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah, I don't care personally, but I think it does scare a lot of people, definitely.
Sure, but it just goes to show, I think this industry is resilient, right? I think that if push comes to shove, yeah, we will probably lose some of the user base that don't have the stomach for it. But then what will we be left with? People that are kind of hardened to have stronger principles. And, I think that collectively, you might see some really interesting development if that's the case. And ultimately, the end goal for, I think, most people that have been around in the space is to say, okay, well, how can we bootstrap P2P economies, P2P payments, P2P systems that kind of work in parallel to like our current framework. And so I think if anything, if regulation comes that's just restrictive, it's only going to accelerate that, because you just gave everybody a reason to build that way.
Exactly. I think a good point as well is the people left in the industry are the hardened ones, and here for the right reasons, and the belief of this technology and the use case that it can provide humanity and provide a sort of even playing field. And I think that sort of ties into a good use case is the LET system, local exchange trading system, that we can kind of run on Ergo, and having sort of local communities being able to spin up and trade any resource, like whether it's time for a skill or anything like that, no matter what it is, being able to sort of run those sort of localized ecosystems, I guess you could call it, or communities, and then being able to sort of pull those together and run larger LET systems across larger jurisdictions. It's pretty cool sort of technology that enables all of this sort of activity.
Sure. You get a decentralized stablecoin, you get some lending protocols, you get some credit communities, you get some local currencies. You can do all kinds of stuff to try to bring value and help people on this planet. And the nice thing is, if you do it the right way, hopefully it becomes unstoppable.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal, isn't it, really?
Well, then, it's like, oh my goodness, did you see what party A said? And it's like, yeah, okay, let them talk.
Yeah, just more noise. All right, gents. Well, we've sort of been running for allocated time, 40, 45 minutes or so at this stage. Is there any sort of last words you want to sort of have on this subject?
Sure. I think that the most important thing is to have principles, and the Ergo Manifesto was written to try to give our community a North Star. And so, whenever like this type of drama and the unpleasantness comes into the space and freaking out and thinking the sky is falling, reread it, see what does that say in terms of like the topic at hand, and hopefully it kind of preserves I guess the principles involved in terms of the network and what the aim is. Yeah,
very well said. And Gaz, are any last words, mate?
Yeah, I suppose just want to say to people, just be careful where you put your money. Don't put in centralized services that could explode any day. you can see what's happening. They are dropping off like flies because they're over leveraged during the bull market. We're not in that market anymore, so they're just not safe at the moment. I wouldn't keep my money in any central service at all right now. So yeah, that's definitely a big one for me. Keep it with your own keys. Keep it offline if you can. Keep it cold storage if you can. It's too many hacks going on. There's too much exploits happening. You just have to be careful.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, very, very well said, gentlemen. So obviously tie into the principles, but then also the assumptions like Gazza was just saying, then also is know what you're interacting with. Just be careful. The space, just think everyone's out to get you and is out to attack you and take your coins, because ultimately that's sort of, there's various nefarious actors out there that will do so also. So gentlemen, it's been a pleasure chatting once again on Hash It Out. Thanks everyone for tuning in again. Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care. Have a good one.